All right, welcome to another episode of Key Biscayne Stories, where neighbors meet neighbors. Today we have Henry Gelband, right? And Key Biscayne resident since 1996. He was a professor of pediatrics, focusing on cardiology with children. He's also a veteran who was a Marine from 1959 to 1965. Henry, how are you doing today? Thank you for joining us on the show.
Joy being here.
It's funny. I met Henry when we were looking for apartments in Key Colony, and then he was casually enjoying a nice cigar in the beautiful afternoon in one of the amazing gardens of Key Colony. And that's when I saw his hat, and I had to approach him to thank you for his service, and that's how we started a conversation. So, Henry, tell us a little bit about your story. How did it all start?
Well, I was born in Vienna, Austria in 1936. For those who don't pay attention, that makes me 86 years old, and I've had a relatively full life. If you recall, Austria was annexed by Germany, the Nazi regime, in March of 1938, and the World War II didn't initially start until September of 1939. So for that roughly year and a half, my whole family was oppressed by the quasi-Nazi regime in Vienna. My father was taken to Dachau in late March of 1939, and for whatever reason, we really don't know, he was released about 5 months later, and he and my mother and sister made our way to Portugal via Switzerland and waited to leave Europe.
You've mentioned your father was sent to Dachau. What was in Dachau?
I think about 4 to 5 months. I was only 2 years old, actually 1 year old when he was taken to Dachau. So I'm not very knowledgeable about the reasons why, and well, I can assume the reasons why, being an entrepreneur, a Jewish entrepreneur. We ended up in Havana, Cuba, in 1938, and lived there for approximately 2 years until a visa became available, and we entered the United States through Key West. I still have those immigration papers.
Nice.
Make a long story short, we eventually ended up in Newark, New Jersey. My father was a very nationalistic person, and within months, he learned English, that he was able to communicate, opened a little store that sold the ladies' hats. I entered school. As you recall, my father changed my name. My nickname now is Heinz, Heinz, like the ketchup. And because nobody really was very sympathetic to the Germans in the early 1940s, he changed it to Henry. And I went to school, learned English, etc. I guess because of our economic situation, growing up in Newark, relatively frugal, learned the wisdom of you want to do something or buy something, work for it. And I sort of shined shoes at a Catholic church before Mass to get enough 10-cent shoe shines to go to the movies on a Sunday afternoon. And my father was extremely nationalistic, always wearing a little American flag in his lapel before it became popular by the politicians of the 80s, 90s. And I grew up very nationalistic. Growing up in northern New Jersey, got very good schooling. By the time I got to high school, I was getting good grades, and when I was a sophomore in high school, I already knew I wanted to be two things. One, a teacher or a doctor that have something to do with the military. Went on to college outside of in Washington, Pennsylvania, little liberal arts school, on a free ride with a total scholarship. And worked in the fraternity, washing dishes 2 weeks a month to get my meals free. Taught Sunday school on Sunday mornings at $2.50 an hour, again for a few dollars, and just loved college. Growing up in northern Jersey, I was sort of street smart, and I was able to become president of fraternity and get into medical school also on a totally free ride through scholarships. One of the interesting things is that medical school for me was $880 a year. Today, it's University of Miami, I believe, is in the $50,000 range.
Incredible.
I use that as a comparison of what people are going through today, trying to get an education. The other thing, obviously, never had a car until I was 26. Did rent a car in the summer to work. While in college, I joined the ROTC, and I actually was the Navy ROTC because the Marine Corps didn't have it at that time. And that's how I had my military background by the time I graduated and became an officer, an ensign. Anyway, my idea of going to medical school revolved about also getting money from living, etc. And unfortunately, my mother had passed away a few years before, so it was just my sister and I and my dad. Anyway, 4 years later, my father passed away, and I went on and just continued my military training and military obligation, at the same time still wishing to go and finish medical school. The reason I'm so big on the military, obviously one of the benefits was that I got $300 a month tax-free in the 60s. So when I went to medical school, really was supported by the military, which I'm grateful for. Continued my education once I got out. Ended up at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York for pediatric training for 2 years. And then I went to Columbia Presbyterian Hospital in New York for 4 years to accomplish my pediatric cardiology training. And then I did 2 years of pediatric cardiology research, arrhythmias in children. In 1971, I was enticed to come to the University of Miami with 5 of my associates. Cardiology at the VA was my lab partner at Columbia. My boss at Columbia became head of pediatric cardiology at the University of Miami. Another pediatric cardiologist became associate dean, and the head of anesthesia at Columbia became the dean of the medical school, vice president of medical affairs. And a few other people came down, and we sort of had a great 50 years there, doing research, teaching, and seeing patients.
Why did you focus in cardiology in children?
I just found out really the most interesting and fascinating. My main interest was the rhythm disturbances in children, which really was a sort of an unknown area. My father had had a heart attack when he was in the early 50s, and maybe that's why I focused on cardiology. But I always knew I had a tremendous love for children. So I put the two together. In fact, if I could digress, I would say 4 out of every 5 days from about 10 to 11:30, I play, for the lack of a better word, with 2- and 3-year-olds at Key Biscayne. They have a little playground with jungle gyms, etc. And I go there in the mornings and play with the kids. I just love the 2-3-year-olds.
For those that don't know, what do you mean by rhythm disturbances in children?
Well,
Like a PVC or?
yeah, but also fast heart rates, slow heart rates. It's a lot more common than people think. The sudden death. The guy, the football player that dropped dead on the field the other day, the other week,
Okay.
Daimler or whatever his name is. Those were our interests at the time.
And can you tell me a little bit how you coming down to with your colleagues, and how does a connection with Key Biscayne, like, was it right away? You came down and you started working at and you chose Key Biscayne as your first residence, or?
No, and also should digress. In my senior year of college, I went to our Thanksgiving football game, high school football game, and I saw this little cheerleader. And I asked my friend, what's her name? Called her up, took her out, and 3 years later, I married her.
Wonderful.
When I graduated, she graduated Vassar. I had graduated medical school. So we got married that summer. And that sort of was my steadfast middle years.
Do you have any children?
3 boys later. They all were born pretty quickly. Actually, 2 of them were born when I was in the Marine Corps in California. And we're still close. I have dinner with one of them that lives also on Key Biscayne. The other one lives on an island in St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. And the third one is up in North Carolina.
Nice.
They're all almost 60.
Do you guys get together? Does he cook? Do you cook, or just go out of town?
Usually go out. That's one of the tragedies in my life. My wife developed cancer at 32 of the breast. She succumbed to cancer of the ovary 10 years later. That was tough. And I lived in the house. When we first moved in, I lived in down at what's Pinecrest, Palmetto. At that time, I guess now it's Palmetto Bay, 100, Cold Cutler and 150th. And a couple of years after Andrew, 96, 4 years after Andrew, I figured it was time to sell the house and move. I found Key Biscayne. And I don't regret that move. I've seen a lot of changes in Key Biscayne, both good and bad. Obviously, I love the influx of the younger families. When I first moved here, I thought I was one of the youngest. But I sort of mind my own business, kept out of the politics, not really interested in the little squabbles that go on. And as you know as well as I do, the situation today is, I think we're overpopulated, over-vehicularized, especially now with the kids with their motorbikes and motor scooters and everything else.
Oh, you mean overpopulated here in the Key, like with
Yeah.
okay, like we're very dense with a lot of.
Well,
you know,
it's a relatively wealthy community by far. And obviously, everyone's got minimum 1 car. Most of the families, 2 cars. Most of the families, 2 cars, a golf cart, and their kids have motor scooters. So I think there's too many gas guzzlers on the Key, or electricity guzzlers on the Key.
I understand. Let's take a little pause.
Well, I gave up driving at night because I don't see these kids or people. I really don't. On their bikes, scooters.
Okay. It's tough.
It's tough.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Let's take a little break. So we're moving into politics, but which is fine. You gave me a great breakdown of your history. We talked a little bit about your service. We're going into the key. Should I ask you about anything in particular you want to talk about regarding politics? Because you also mentioned you wanted to share your sentiments on like the situation. National.
Yeah.
I can ask you about that.
Well, you can ask me, mentions the land of opportunity. And I think I'm a great example of it, coming to the United States. Also, the whole Cuban population to me is very intriguing. Because if you think of what has happened since 1960, that it's true, within 20 years, by 1980, they had their own newspaper, Spanish newspaper.
Yes.
Yeah. In
Miami?
Miami. My radio stations, accountants, banks, education people. I mean, yes, the very bright and richest came from Cuba in 1960. But it's an amazing exodus from there and immigration here as a group. So there is tremendous opportunity. And now in 2020, you look at it, they run Southern Florida, economically, politically. And I think it's an amazing thing that this land, I hope they appreciate it as much as I do. And I think that opportunity that they gave me and others like me.
Okay, perfect. So I can ask you about that, and then you could respond in a similar fashion.
I love it. That's why. Yeah.
But let me ask you first. So give me 3 seconds.
Sure.
So you mentioned about U.S. being the land of opportunity. What did you mean by that exactly?
Well, if you look at my history and history of other populations that have come to the United States, most, if not all, have succeeded. I guess the best example in South Florida would be the Cuban exodus from Cuba in 1960. Within 20 years or so, there was Spanish newspapers, Hispanic banks, Hispanic lawyers, doctors, radio stations, TV, etc. And I think that people should understand that this is a land of opportunity. You can achieve an awful lot with very little to start with. There's so many avenues of scholarship available, dollars available, forgetting the government with subsidizing everything and everybody who really needs it. It is a true land of opportunity. And I would wish that everyone really took advantage of it. If you really look at the history, when I got out of the service in 1965 and Vietnam was just starting, the national opinion of us veterans at that time, especially against the make love, not war population, veterans, disabled veterans were spit on, never welcomed, wouldn't get jobs, etc. And today, I look forward to people the reason I wear my hat is I look forward to being stopped by people and saying thank you for your service. It's an appreciative thing. And it's just it was my way of giving back for what the states gave me. I can get more emotional about it, but I don't think I will. I don't think it's appreciated as much by the general population as it should be.
I'm with you. I think that every opportunity that I get when I see the hat, it's to thank you for your service. Because in my eyes, it's like you're putting your life on the line so that we can continue to do what we do in this country.
Well, put it this way. I didn't have to put my life on the line. I mean, closest I came was in the hills of Guantanamo with the Cubans up on the hill and the Marines down at the bottom of the hill with only 6 rounds of ammunition. That's the truth. But, we had some lieutenant colonel who kept saying, requesting attacking. He was out of his mind from a military aspect, as far as I was concerned.
He was requesting to attack the
Cubans.
The Cubans in the hill.
He knew that the 101st Airborne was ready to fly from Georgia, which we didn't know. So, but anyway,
Well, I mean, even though you didn't necessarily put your life on the line right away, conflict can happen anytime.
I guess the first example is here I came here, my father with $0, truths. 80 years later, I'm sitting here talking to you and having a great life as far as I'm concerned. Worked for 50 years, retired, enjoying it, free of speech. As this is an example of, and people should really appreciate that the sky is blue today, and they don't.
I understand. I understand 100%. Would you say that, I guess, your dad's nationalistic spirit inspired you and like he instilled that in you, and then that what took you to join the army?
Well, yes and yes. He never spoke of what went on in those years when the Nazis were enveloping Europe or his experiences. But I know that it must have been agonizing because his parents, my mother's parents, and all the rest of the family of those that did not immigrate probably ended up murdered in the camps. He supported the war. We rarely talked about it, but I think that was his way of trying to separate his life from what was going on. I just grew up very independently then. He went to work every day, especially after my mom died, because he went to work every day, and I was growing up with my sister, and I was 13, she was 14 and a half, and we just had each other, and we had to make do. So I was relatively independent in formative years. As a teenager, I used to take my father's car when I was 15 years old illegally and drive. I knew it was wrong, but I wanted to be the big man on the block. So I picked up some of my friends and we went around till the police caught us. Didn't do that again. I did. My father just had to look at me. I knew I would never do it again.
So
Yeah.
you grew up fast.
Very fast. I think we had to. I think a lot of kids had to. Don't forget, kids were going into the war when they were 17, 18 years old. Today, 17-year-olds doesn't care about anything except can he get a joint on Friday night or go to a bar and meet a nice lady. I mean, times were different. Times were different. I don't think they're much better, but times are different.
So going back to your time in Guantanamo, is there any stories that you replay in your mind often about what happened? Maybe something funny, maybe something serious, something you could share with us?
Well, as you know, military operations take time. Good example will be the Gulf War. We announced that we're going to go to the Gulf in free Kuwait, and yet it took us 6 months just to get there. And it was the same thing at Guantanamo. The rest of our ammunition and stuff got there anywhere from 10 days to 6 weeks later. Obviously, Khrushchev sort of stopped his aggressiveness there, took out the rockets. So the Seabees built us a little shack on the beach. And for the next 4 weeks, all we did was sit on the beach and drink beer.
Who's a CB?
It was swimming in the Caribbean.
Swimming in the... But when you mentioned who built you the shacks?
The CB, the construction battalion.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, they took some built so like a Quonset hut with a bar in front of it, and you see 1,000 Marines sitting on the beach drinking beer. I mean, things were cheap then too. Oh God, cigarettes were $1 a carton. It's a penny apiece.
Wow.
Well, that's the military, they've got special rates, but penny apiece.
And,
That's when I started smoking cigars. Because I think they were 2 cents, 3 cents apiece.
and originally, the mission of going to Guantanamo, what was the original? Because of the tension that was happening?
Yes. Khrushchev was sending missiles
Yeah.
to Cuba, and Kennedy declared a blockade. We were there Friday. Kennedy made his speech in the blockade on 3 days later on Monday. And in case there somehow was a fire action anytime between the blockade ships and the Khrushchev ships, etc., it would have blown into a little escalation. And that's still a threat. I don't know if I'm a hawk today. I know I'm happy we're sending tanks to the Ukraine, but I don't know what's going to happen between us and Russia, or us and China, or us and North Korea. We've always got crazy people in the world. I don't know why we can't leave. Excuse me. How old are you?
I'm 35.
Do you realize in your 35 years, that's a relatively long time.
Mm-hmm.
There hasn't been more than maybe a month when one country wasn't shooting at another? Think about it.
Around the world.
Around the world.
There has been conflict nonstop. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, go back to the Vietnam War. Since then, it's been going on. Outside of Korea, which ended in 1953, truce has never been signed. Or a truce has, but a treaty has never been signed.
With the North Koreans.
With the North Koreans. And that's 70 years ago when it was over. 1953. Exactly. And since then, outside of that area, we've always been there. We stuck our nose some places, and some other countries are sticking their nose. The Middle East has been going crazy for how many years? Turkey and the Kurds. I mean, go anywhere you want. South America, Central America. People don't understand. The world's so beautiful. Why shoot each other? I mean, India and Pakistan, they're both Muslims as far as I'm concerned. They're both Shiite, Muslim, To me, they're the same. They're just people.
Yeah, I am
getting away from what you really want to hear, but
no,
it's interesting.
It's your story. It's your story. It's about you, and it's for us to get to know you.
If I have any true message, I would tell the 10 to 15-year-olds, be strong, be wise, do 3 things every day. 1, learn something. 2, think every day. And 3, laugh every day. And take advantage of those 3 things to build your future. There should be nothing that should be able to stop you. The opportunities are all here.
Especially here, for kids and families living in the Key, the amount of resources and tools to our disposal to do all those things, laugh, enjoy every day.
The Key is an ideal place. You asked me why I moved here. 1, it was very close to work. But 2, what they do for the kids and what they do for the adults with the community service and all the sports. I had baseball teams when I first moved here. I coached baseball teams.
Nice.
Oh, what we had for the gas station, that's now going to be a playground or something.
Yes, there used to be a gas station there. Yeah.
That was an Amico gas station.
Oh, man, I don't remember the name, but I remember there being a gas station, just like there used to be another supermarket where CVS is.
Yeah, that was started with a K, I think. King Kong or something, I don't know. No, like I said, growth is growth. You can't, things have changed and they're going to change. And the more people, the more taxes, the more money's made, the more chances for graft, the more chances for bad politics. I mean, if I had nothing to do, I don't have, but if I had more of a detective, I would go and investigate every condo manager that's on the Key. And I'm willing to bet 1 out of 3 lives better than his salary. In other words, insinuating that he gets his house painted by the people who paint the condo, or his lawn is done by the same people who do the condo's lawn. Little extra things. Some people would say that's the American widow.
That's the American way.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, this story about these 5 Afro-American policemen beating up another Afro-American, it hurts me. I mean, I have no more love for Afro-Americans than I do for Italians, Asians, etc. But why? I don't understand it.
Yeah. So, circling back a little bit more on Key Biscayne and your love for the community and for children and your work that you've done there with your studies in cardiology. And so your life here in the Key, like you've been here since
25 years.
For 25 years. So you said you've coached baseball?
Yep.
Have you done any other related community activities through your years?
Well, I used to belong to the community and do my laps there. I used to swim back and forth. I look at the calendar every day, and I just think it's amazing what the opportunities that all age groups on the Key have. And probably to me, that's one of the biggest aspects of the positive things that happen on the Key. On the other hand, why you have to pay 60 cents a gallon more at the 2 gas stations compared to, that bothers the hell out of me.
I understand what you mean, yeah.
And people that buy there obviously can afford it, but a lot of people can't.
Yeah, it's not like the Key was like 25 miles away from the mainland. Are there other veterans also living in the Key that you mingle with?
There's a lot of them. On 4th of July, Veterans Day, they have this little
They do.
thing. I'll be very honest. I don't go. I sort of stay home and do my thing by myself. I do that with the tragedies I had, my wife's death, my mother's death. I don't have to go to a place of worship and with 40 other people. I just try to keep those things for myself. Yes, they are. There's a nice group of veterans here. They're very active. They really are. And veterans' wives, too.
Okay.
And I hope it's not dwindling.
I guess we'll have to.
That's my fault. Like I say, I'm not one of these I'm not a joiner.
That's fine.
Uh,
Society's filled with all sorts of people that do all sorts of things, and that's what makes us great. We do all sorts of stuff. You do your thing, we do our thing, and if we can do our thing together, great. If not, you do your thing.
I support my ideals without joining. My best example is religion. I will support a lot of Jewish things, but that doesn't mean I go to temple every week. That's if I don't. Yeah.
That's fair. So talking about that, can you describe to us what is like a good weekend for you in the Key, or how does your week look like? What are the things you like to do in the Key?
Well, that depends if I have a girlfriend or not.
Okay,
and what can be censored or not.
Well, let's do what would you do with a girlfriend? But obviously within the confined space of Key Biscayne stories.
No, I think because of if it's not available on the Key, it's available very close by. You want to see good theater on a Saturday night, you can do that. Just go to a movie, you can stay, you can do that. But I think my ideal would be, believe it or not, just get up on a Saturday morning, have a nice breakfast, 1 egg over, maybe a donut gallery, couple cups of coffee, hash browns, come back, read the newspaper, smoke a cigar while I'm walking and people looking at me smoking a cigar and trying to get a little exercise. In the afternoon, maybe going down to Key Biscayne Beach, not the Key Biscayne, but Key Colony Beach, interacting with some of the people. I do that less today because I do not speak Spanish. So it's changed. We grew up playing that in New York and New Jersey, like handball, that one wall paddle, the true wooden paddle. Then it went to racket. I find, when I was a little 10 years younger, I used to ride my bike through Crandon. I would stop and have coffee, my second cup of coffee, that little stall they have on Crandon Park, just north of the old zoo. I say, I am not lonely. I could be by myself and meditate and think and read. Now,
You have your son who lives in the Key.
I live with a son that's just moved to the Key. He's in his 50s. He's getting married for the first time.
I mean,
And so we have dinner once a week. And I have a grandson that lives on Brickell, and he tries to join us once a week. And I keep in touch with my kids, pretty much.
good.
Um,
Let's take another.
I mean, I think I appreciate less than a normal person. I mean, I didn't walk here, but I could just walk now back and appreciate saying hello to people, seeing some ibis walking around, whatever. Doesn't have to be a band playing. But again, there's so much to do here. I mean, they can go to movies that the community center puts on, the shows that they take you to. There's more to do than people think.
I mean, if you are involved, you check the calendar, you see the Chamber of Commerce calendar is active. You have the community center, you have the village, you have a lot of, ways to see all the things that we're doing. And if you are on top of it on social media and the websites, there's a lot of things to do. And the businesses sometimes they have bands, they have artists.
The only disadvantage living on the Key is like what happened yesterday with the plane crashing over there. Yeah. If you had a hot date, Fort Lauderdale with somebody, you ain't going to make it, And that happens, unfortunately, when it happens once a year, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But it happens. And I used to love the tennis tournament when they had it here. Mm-hmm. But coming from work at 6 o'clock, it was a killer, because the first session ended, new one starting, and you were backed up all the way almost to the toll or back into Key Biscayne. But you take the good with the bad.
It was nice to have the tournament in when we had it. So one of the closing questions we have here on Key Biscayne Stories is, what is your favorite part about Key Biscayne?
In a nutshell, the people. Yeah. For the most part, if you eliminate some of the teenagers, for the most part, most people say, even tourists, this time of year, will say, good morning, have a good day. The ability to get anything you want on the Key that you may need, be it food, clothes, electronics, whatever you need is available. Then I guess also the closeness to the mainland, that if you have to go off and fight the traffic in downtown Miami, you're relatively close. Like I said, one of the reasons I moved here is to be 12 minutes from my job for the last 20 years. The atmosphere. I think what's good about the Key definitely is much more than what I find bad about the Key. What's bad about the Key is tolerable. What's good about the Key is fantastic.
I also want to take a moment to thank G3 Tutoring for lending us their space. My friend Juan is amazing and letting me use his space on Sundays to record. But Henry, it has been great to have you on the show, get your story of how you started here in the Key, everything from the beginning to your service. So thank you for your service again. You know, it's always great to be able to see veterans wearing their hats, giving us an opportunity to thank you. So, and thank you again for jumping on the show and joining us.
I appreciate it. Thank you.